In 2022, this content creator asked her followers to vote for 2 different political parties. And it wasn't just her. Multiple content creators were endorsing different parties at the same time, which made people wonder, are they being paid to influence voter behaviors? Well, we don't know, because in Malaysia, there are no laws governing where political funds can come from or where they go, leaving the door wide open for unchecked influence of money in political campaigning and corruption. That's why organizations like BERSIH, IDEAs, and a few conscientious MPs have campaigned tirelessly for political financing reforms to make Malaysian politics cleaner and more fair. After decades of struggle, they may be on the brink of a historic victory. Political financing is basically about how and where political parties and politicians get their money. Like any other organization, political parties need money to maintain their offices, pay party workers, run election campaigns, and so on. Raising this money is a huge part of the political process. But in Malaysia,
we don't have the right information about where these parties are getting the money from, and therefore we cannot follow the trail of the money, whether it's corrupt or not. Then we wouldn't know how to keep the people in power accountable.
Elected officials are supposed to work in the interests of the public who elected them, building roads and schools, deciding who gets to maintain streetlights, who treats our water, the list goes on. But this interest can be corrupted by money.
We have had cases in the past where political parties receive funding from questionable sources, including foreign sources, which may or may not dictate the way in which the political party is to behave, who've then made decisions over huge public contracts. Another example is when private companies donate to political parties in excessive sums, sometimes to multiple parties, and when they do so, they sometimes expect that there should be some form of kickback. If the quality is compromised because the best contractor is not the one that has won the tender, then this is where people start to feel affected.
Now, Malaysia does have laws that legislate against corruption, money laundering, and abuse of power. We even have an Election Offences Act that forbids bribing voters. And yet, there are enough loopholes and vaguely worded definitions that none are quite able to regulate the specifics of political financing.
We do need to reform. Every single policy we do has been affected by vested interests and corruption. And as a result, you lose public trust. The ringgit is weak because of lack of confidence. Whether the investments are really coming in or not is questionable. I believe the political parties and the political leaders will come to their senses, hopefully in this year, 2024, and push through this particular bill.
Enter the Political Financing Bill, which is planned to be tabled in Parliament in 2024. The bill revolves around transparency and includes 2 important aspects: regulation and oversight. These are crucial as Malaysia remains one of the few countries without laws banning foreign donations to political parties. It's also part of the minority that doesn't ban anonymous donations to candidates. With regulation, parties and politicians are required to disclose the sources and amount of funds they receive.
We are not asking somebody who donate 5 ringgit to Team Milo and therefore you must disclose. The proper way to go about this is like, for example, in Australia. If you donate above a certain amount of money, your name as well as the amount you donated will be publicly declassified.
Limitations to different groups would apply. Donations by GLCs, foreign citizens, and governments would be banned to mitigate misuse of funds and foreign influence in Malaysian politics. Despite these restrictions, International IDEA says donation limits are notoriously difficult to control because money can channel through other people. This is where the creation of an oversight body comes in. And according to International IDEA, the oversight body needs the required mandate, sufficient resources, and relevant capacity, and that is impartial and independent from any political pressure. The oversight body would also have to collaborate with other agencies for holistic regulation of political financing. Another important element of the bill is the addition of public funding. Parties will be allocated funds from a government budget based on the number of seats each party has in Parliament.
Essentially, we need to pay the parties to not be corrupt. It's something that may be very difficult for people to accept, but I would say you pay the parties to be professional, to make sure that they don't have to rely on the corruption of a 1MDB case all over again.
While the current draft of the bill aims to regulate how parties source their funding, it doesn't mention how those funds are spent, or the need to report it at all.
Although it contains a lot of important provisions that we believe would strengthen institutions and strengthen democracy in the country, it does have some gaps. But this is why these reforms need to happen sequentially, but also work has to happen simultaneously.
For this law to be passed, it needs to be tabled, debated, and voted on in Parliament. But this isn't the first, second, third, or even fourth time the topic of political financing has been brought up. Calls for political financing regulations date back to 2007, helmed by the opposition leaders with the first BERSIH protest. The next year, silence.
In 2008, the same opposition leaders were now in control of state governments. And we were told no. And I like to quote here what one minister specifically told us. If we make institutional reforms, we can lose power. By 2010, nobody, whether BERSIH National or the opposition, were interested in any reforms.
Between 2007 and 2022, 3 separate recommendations were drawn up, all leading nowhere. Former Prime Minister Najib Razak had even set up a committee to look into political financing, which ultimately disbanded. Then the Malaysian political crisis of 2020 to 2022 saw the appointment of 3 prime ministers, multiple party exchanges, and Malaysia's first post-election coalition government consisting of both former opposition and government members.
Now we sort of changed place, but we are still talking about the same thing. If we are talking about greater participation among the people of the country, then you need to make the playing field as level as possible. We cannot miss this opportunity.
With the rising prominence of politics in the social media sphere, this bill could not have come at a better time. During the GE15 campaigning period, social media became a battleground to win votes.
Baby, aku ada type.
And if you wanna have a say, go vote, go vote.
Aside from politicians doing cute dances and influencers putting on political shirts, there was a shocking amount of racist political content uploaded. And again, nobody knows who paid for what.
Social media falls under the category of what we call third-party actor, someone outside the political system that is helping to shape events within the political system. These third-party actors could be private financiers who use and actively fund social media as a mechanism to shape political events, to shape public policies. And the volume of money now being used to fund social media, that too is a major source of political financing. The question arises, where is it coming from? I don't think it is coming solely from within political parties.
This kind of online campaigning has major impacts on society. Research on social media campaigning during GE15 found that paid ads for political content can lead to disinformation and polarization.
The voter are being turned into consumer. Somebody is paying somebody to create content to influence you, the voter. People don't even know that they are being influenced. Legislation need to keep up with what's happening. Now, I'm not suggesting government dictating what is the right content to be posted online, but I do believe there needs to be some sort of compulsion to disclose who is paying for this particular political content and how much is being spent.
Whether the political financing bill alone does enough to reform and clean up our politics is a valid question, but most agree that it is a vital step in the right direction.
If the political financing bill eventually becomes an act, I do believe that this would unite sufficient numbers of members of parliament from different divides to be able to now finally see that, hey, difficult, challenging institutional reform is possible.
In the end, your elected representatives should serve you, the rakyat, and not be controlled by big anonymous donors. We need regulations to ensure political campaigning, online and offline, are being funded transparently and fairly.
We have gotten to a stage where political financing is the talk of the town. Ordinary members of the public is aware of it. Hopefully this will lead to a deepening of democracy in Malaysia. to usher in this new era of multi-party democracy. We want to create a level playing field where both opposition and government MPs feel they have adequate resources to do what they need to do as lawmakers in this country, and not just everything about being in power, therefore I have money.